Hello ICS3C folks. This lesson is on arrays, which is the second big concept of the track in Code Academy that you're working on. And arrays are very, very useful in computer science and coding, and they're not too tough. Pretty easy thing to use in our program. So this lesson's about that. I think you've got a copy of this note, or otherwise you're taking the note, and I'll leave that up to you, I suppose. What's an array? An array is a list of data stored with one name. So earlier, we had a whole bunch of values being read in, and we had to call them all different names: lunch 1, lunch 2, lunch 3, total 1, total 2, whatever. But we can actually have a whole bunch of things, whatever they happen to be, named with one variable, and that's called an array. The big thing about arrays is as soon as you see a square bracket, that's going to be an array. We're dealing with an array somehow. So here's an example. Ferd stats still gets declared with the JavaScript keyword var. There's the name of our array, and then all the stuff is in square brackets. Ends with a semicolon, just like most JavaScript statements. Notice what's strange about this is some of the stuff can be numbers and some of it can be strings. So this array has 1, 2, 3, 4 elements in the array, what are called elements. 4 different things. So this might be his first name, last name, date of birth, phone number, Ferd stats. It says we get individual items from array by referring to its position, also called an index or subscript in square brackets. So if we actually wanted to print out Ferd's first name, then we'd have Ferd stats with square brackets and then access that position. So remember, arrays start counting at 0, not 1. So even though this we'd think of as the first element in the array, we start counting at 0. So this is Ferd stats 0. So for instance, console.log Ferd stats 2 in square brackets would print out 1999 because that's 0. This is the 0 position. This is the 1 position. There's 2. So it would print out 1998. If we wanted to, assign a certain value to an array, so Ferd stat 6 equals 52, maybe that's his Ferd's mark in computer science, it would save the 52 in the 7th spot. Right? So this is what the array would look like in memory now, where we would have the 0th spot is that, first, second, third, fourth would be undefined, right? Because we had that original values, and then we put something in the 6th value is that 52. And that's how we access individual elements of an array we just put the number in square brackets. That's like the position. It's almost like the address. And who lives at address 6 is the number 52. Who lives at address 1? Well, it's the name Vandenford. And we can access those in this that stuff in our program in the same way we would any variable. Okay, dandy. Just combining for loops and arrays makes our code very efficient. Watch. Okay, so I've got a new JS bin going here, and maybe you do too. That we're gonna do our lunches program. And notice, remember, JS bin doesn't like doing loops, so we're gonna put the no protect line in there. No protect. Then I'm gonna have an array of lunches that's going to be empty right now. It's going to be empty to start because we don't have the values. We're going to get them from the user. The square brackets show that it's going to be an array. And I'm going to have the total because I'm going to add up all the lunches. Remember, I have to give that an initial value, and I'll remind you of why in a second. And then I'm going to have my for loop. Here's my counter. And I have to start counting at 0 because remember, the arrays start counting at 0. And I'm going to count up to 5. and then I plus plus increments it by 1 each time. There's my for loop, and then I'm going to have lunches I, right? So it's going to be lunch 1 or lunch 0, lunch 1, lunch 2 up to lunch 4, which will be 5 in total. And then I'm going to prompt for what did you spend on day, and then I'm going to go plus. Now, what's weird here is because I'm starting counting at 0, on day 0, well, that's not very good communication. So I'm actually just going to add 1 to I, so it makes sense um, to do that to the user when they hear what did you spend on day 0. That doesn't make any sense. 0 plus 1, it'll say what did you spend on day 1, and then I'm going to add up the total. This line here, remember, is why I had to have um, that value 0, because remember, JavaScript calculates the right-hand side, then assigns it to the left-hand side. So it would have said the first time through, well, total doesn't have a value, so I'm going to have an error message. Um, and then this will add up all of the lunch values. Now I'm gonna go back and change something in just a second, but then all we have to do then is print out the message, you spent a total of plus total. And I like rounding. I like using the to fixed thing to round so it looks like it's in dollars and cents on lunches. Put a little space in there. Okay. This looks okay. Now, there's actually an error going on here, because remember what happens is this comes in as a string, and if I'm adding total up, it'll goof this all up because it thinks it's it's a sentence, that lunches is um, a word, and we're adding up words called concatenation, remember. So I'm going to change that, parse float, change that to a number, and then that should work. If I run that, works dandy, just dandy. And what's neat about this is like our programs are starting to get to be pretty flexible programs where all I would have to do is switch I, and then I could have 17 lunches or 25 lunches or whatever, and the same code would still work. And even better than this, when I start changing it to use functions, and I'm going to actually take a little break and come back in part 2 and show you how if we use functions with for loops and functions with arrays, that our code can become very, very flexible. I think back in the note, I do have a copy of that code there, or pretty close to it. There might be a few little changes. And the next thing I'm going to do is adding functions from earlier makes our programs reusable and easier to read. Um, they'll get a little bit big, but I'm going to show you how that works in part 2 of today's video.